Hello guys, welcome back to the channel for a new Databricks video. Today's video would be about Delta Lake column mapping, or in other words, how you can drop a column or how you can rename a column in Databricks, and also about how you can change the data type of a column in a Delta Lake table. By default, if you try to rename a column or drop a column in Databricks, you will get an error. You have to enable the column mapping option, which is pretty easy apparently to do that. So I have already prepared sample code. Let's jump straight into the example. Okay guys, we are here in our Databricks workspace. I have already prepared this notebook. The first thing we need to do is actually create some sample data. So let's generate some sample data. We have this data frame that we are going to save it as delta table called demo. Now, one thing to notice here is that we have all these columns. Here we have ID, age, name, and here we have two string columns, int underscore string 1, int underscore string 2, but they are actually integer numbers. Here, as you can see, it's 100, 150, 175, 200, 250, 275, etc., etc. So they are actually numbers, and we are going to cast these two columns into integer columns. Now they are just strings. And here we have a timestamp column, which is actually a string, but we are going to convert it into timestamp. Okay, so we save this data here. As you can see, this is the data. This is a string column, and this is also a string column, and this timestamp column is also a string column, and we are going to change these things. But for now, for example, if we want to rename a column age into age in years, if we run this command, it's going to give us an error. As you can see, it says delta unsupported rename column. Column rename is not supported for your delta table. Please enable column mapping on your delta table with mapping mode name. So if you go here in the documentation, it says Databricks supports column mapping for Delta Lake tables, which enables metadata only changes to mark columns as deleted or renamed without rewriting data files. So that's the good thing, we don't have to rewrite data files. And we need to enable this column mapping option. How you can do this? Using alter table, provide the table name, set table properties, and provide delta.columnmapping.mode equals name. Also, it needs to be reader version 2 and above, and writer version 5 and above. And here again, if I try to actually let me drop this column here, this name column from the table, again we are going to get the same error. But if we enable the column mapping properties here, the option, and we set the minimum reader to 2 and the minimum writer to 5, if we run this command, alter table, table name, set table properties, and provide all these options here, now if we try to rename this column, it's going to rename it. From age, it's going to be age in years. As you can see, the command ran fine. And here, if we want to drop the column, alter table, table name, drop column, we are going to drop the name column here. So now if we select from this table, we are going to see that we renamed the age column into age in years, and we dropped the name column. That's why it's missing from here, right? Okay, now that we have this data here, as you can see, we have two columns, string columns, that they should be integer columns and not string columns, and one string column which should have been a timestamp column. So let's see how we can actually cast into different data types. It's pretty simple. One way to do it is provide a dictionary here. On the left you have the column name, and on the right you have the data type. For example, here we have int underscore string 1, and then we need this needs to be converted into an integer type. The second column here, int underscore string 2, should also be converted into integer type, in the timestamp underscore string column should be converted to a timestamp type, right? So we read the demo table, then we can define a function. If we want, we can pass the data frame and this dictionary, but the key here is that we loop through this dictionary here, and then we have the column name and the data type, and for each column we do df.withColumn, column name, we provide the column name, and here we cast the column name as the new type, and we return the data frame. And then we can write into the demo table using override schema equals true. So let's run this code. And here it is. So let me run this. As you can see, now this column is an integer, this column is an integer, and this is a timestamp. And here, again, 1, 2, 3, that's an integer column. Now we converted these string columns into integer columns and timestamp columns. One thing to notice here is that we used the override schema option. It's not like renaming the table or dropping a column, that we don't have to do that. When you change the data type of a column, then unfortunately you have to override that table. Moving on, we're going to see the complete example of all these things. So under one function, I have combined everything that we just saw. We can change the data type in some columns, we can rename other columns, and we can drop some other columns. I have already created a simple function with all those parameters, and then one by one, first I change the data types, then I rename the tables, the columns, and then I drop the unnecessary columns. Of course, this is not the best way. I just wanted to demonstrate something for this example, one function that combines everything. So the first thing is to provide the table name, apparently, and then we need to pass the dictionary with the data types, as we mentioned. On the left we have the column name, on the right the data types, and then we have the columns that we want to drop in a list, and then we also have a dictionary with the columns that we want to rename. For example, here ID should be renamed to user underscore ID, age should be renamed to user underscore age, and then using this replace underscore data types or whatever name you want to provide in your function, we pass all those parameters here. And the first one apparently is a string because it's the table name. Then we have the dictionary with the data types. Then we have the dictionary with the columns to rename, and then we have the list with the columns to drop. So the first thing we want to do is cast into some columns into different data types. Again, with the same logic for column, comma, data type in this dictionary that we pass with the data types. If it's not in the columns that we want to drop, then we cast it to the data type that we want, else we use none, right? And then here we use df.write, format delta, mode override, and with this option override schema equals to true. Exactly the same thing that we saw before, and here then we enable column mapping because we're going to rename some columns, and here again with the same logic with a for loop, we iterate through this dictionary with the columns to rename that we passed here, that we created here, as you can see, and then we use spark.sql, alter table, the table name, rename column, alt to new column, and then the columns to drop from the list that we provided here, the columns to drop. So here we don't need to use a for loop, we can use alter table, table name, and then drop columns, that's plural, and then comma dot join with the list of the columns that we want to drop, right? And so if we run this thing here, now actually let's rerun the initial cell to have this initial table here with ID, age, name, and those columns are again string as well, so we have to convert those columns into integers, this column into a timestamp, we have to drop the name column, and we have to rename the age column into user age, and also the ID column into user ID. So let's run this code here. It will take a few seconds to run. As you can see here, the columns that we print here after we cast into the different data types, then alter table, the demo, drop columns, name. Now if we select from this table, now let's see what we get. We get user underscore ID. We renamed the ID column, we renamed the age column into user underscore age, we dropped the name column, and then we converted these two columns into an integer type, and here this string column into a timestamp type, right? This is it for today, guys. A very quick tutorial about column mapping in Delta Lake tables. I'm going to upload this notebook on GitHub if you want to play around and take a look and learn more about column mapping in Databricks. If you like the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, guys.